everyone! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Bethany and today I'm going to talk to you about all the books I read in November. So I had 15 books on my TBR, which is linked here, and I managed to read 24, which is super good. So I actually finished every single book that was actually on my TBR list, which I don't think I've ever done in my entire life before, and then obviously read 9 additional ones. I had a lot of 4 and 5 star reads this month, particularly a lot of 5 stars, but I kind of planned it to be that way. It was my birthday month and I wanted to make sure I had a bunch of good reads, so I put some rereads and stuff that I pretty much knew I was going to love. I feel like after so many years of reading, especially young adult, I've learned exactly what kind of things I'm going to like and not like. So I don't really read a lot of books that I don't like because I just won't read them if I think that I'm going to not like them, you know? But there were some this month that I have a lot of thoughts on and I can't wait to talk about them. I also just really quickly wanted to say thank you so much for anyone who's subscribed to my channel. I've just hit 100 subscribers, which is super exciting. I've been having a lot of fun making these videos, learning how to edit, everything. So thank you so much for following along, and I really appreciate your support. Another thing I'm very excited about is that today is December 1st, which means I get to start my TBR Advent calendar for December, which I made a whole video of and I'll link here. I've got a lot of good feedback on it, and I'm very happy about that because I'm proud of the fact that I actually had a creative idea for once. So if you didn't watch the video yet, basically I picked out 25 books to read this month. I wrapped them all up. You can see the shelf in the background there. And I'm picking one every day to read. So today I got to pick my first one and it was such a fun way to start the morning. So I got Wilder Girls by Rory Power. So I'm first going to talk about all the adult books I read this month. I read 7 and they were mostly very good and some were not very good. The first one I read was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I read Circe by Madeline Miller last year, I think, and loved it. And I've been meaning to read this one forever. My only thing is that I saw so many people online saying that this was going to make me cry, and I cry very easily, like it doesn't take a lot. So I went into this thinking, oh good, this is going to be a nice cathartic cry, and I didn't cry. So maybe that's just on me because I had high expectations for my tears, but I did really enjoy it anyway. The Song of Achilles follows Achilles, shockingly, and his partner, I guess, Patroclus. So basically Patroclus is raised with Achilles, and I'm 100% pronouncing his name wrong, so sorry. And it literally just follows like Achilles' life. And if you know anything about the Greek myth, then you'll know about this, but if you don't, then you'll get to find out. I didn't really know anything, like I know about the Achilles heel, but I certainly didn't know all the details in here. So it was amazing to learn about. She has such a simple writing style, like it's not at all flowery or like purple prose, but it just communicates the character's emotions and everything that's going on so well, and it still manages to impact you, although not to the point of tears. So I will read anything else that Madeline Miller ever writes, especially if it's about Greek mythology, and I would definitely recommend this. I also read Love Your Life by Sophie Kinsella, which was a gift from my boyfriend for my birthday, and I gave this 4.5 stars. It wasn't like, change my life good, which is why I didn't get 5 stars, but I loved it and can't wait to reread it. Sophie Kinsella is amazing. She's just so, all of her characters are so charming. This man always starts his car when I'm trying to record a video and it's so loud. Sophie Kinsella can do no wrong. Her characters are so charming and flawed that you really can see yourself in them. Even if they're not similar to you, it's just like they show you that no one's perfect and we all have these different struggles and we can all overcome them. This one follows a girl named Ava who goes to a writing retreat in Italy and meets a mysterious man. They fall in love at the retreat, but once they get back to their regular lives, they are trying to figure out if they're compatible there. It made me very sad that I can't go on any trips right now because normally I would have finished this book and then immediately booked a flight to Italy, but here we are. But yeah, I just loved specifically their both characters' friend groups in this were a really big part of the book, and I loved seeing kind of their contributions and the found family that they all had. So yeah, this one got a 4.5 stars. I love Sophie Kinsella and I would die for her, and end of story. I also read The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I was in a thriller mood, but this wasn't exactly what I was looking for. I kind of wanted to be scared and freaked out like I was by Home Before Dark and Turn of the Key, but this one was just more mystery focused, I guess. So it follows a wedding on a remote island off the coast of Ireland. Someone dies and you're going back through the events of the day to figure out who, what happened, why, etc. Pretty classic. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty forgettable, but the atmosphere was great, and that's sometimes all you get. I did really like how everything kind of tied up at the end. I feel like people could guess the end pretty easily. I'm an idiot and can't guess mystery endings to save my life, so I didn't, but you might. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Again, it was pretty good, but I'm not going to remember this probably next week, so. I also decided on a whim to read The House of Earth and Blood I always call it Crescent City, and I forget that the actual title is House of Earth and Blood, and the series is Crescent City. Anyway, this is the first book in Sarah J. Maas's new series. This only came out in, I think, like April, and I read it then, and I just felt like rereading it now. And I have so many feelings about this book. So the first half are pretty terrible. Like, the world building is nonsensical. I feel like I'm pretty good at figuring out what's going on in fantasy world, and this one just goes completely over my head. There's no like explanations. It's so info dumpy, and if there was just like an index of all the different races and like who's in charge of what, maybe that would help. But literally I was rereading it 6 months later and I still was like, oh my god, what is happening? I have no idea. But then the second half is so emotional and impactful and just destroys my life. And so always, both times I've read this, the first half I'm like, this is a 3-star book. It's meh. And then at the end I'm like, 5 stars, amazing, all-time favorite, changed my life. So I technically gave this 5 stars, but there's a big caveat there that the beginning is crap. Oh yeah, and if you don't know what it's about, it follows a girl named Bryce whose best friends were murdered, and it's kind of a murder mystery set in a fantasy world. Pretty much all I need to know. There's also a romance, of course, because it's a Sarah J. Maas book, and the romance is amazing. Bryce is my favorite character of Sarah J. Maas's that she's ever written. I feel like she is definitely the one that I can relate to the most. She's very flawed, but in a super relatable way. So yeah, I'm really excited for the next book to come out in this series, especially now that I've kind of figured out what's going on in this ridiculous world. If you're a Sarah J. Maas fan, you will love this. It is just technically adult, so it's a little bit harder going. Another one. So I read To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini, which is a space opera about first contact with aliens. This book is almost 900 pages long, and it genuinely could have been like 400 pages. There were some amazing themes in this book, like amazing messages about what humanity is and what we're here for, and like whether we should be exploring space, etc. But it dragged so much. I had to force myself through this. It normally never takes me more than 2 or 3 days to read a book, even if it's this length, but this one took me, I think, over a week. Like, it was just such a slog. And I just felt like the main character, Kira, was so one-dimensional, and I don't know if that's a result of him trying to write a woman as his main character, but she just was like, she felt like nothing to me. She could have been anyone. She had no different, like, she missed people that were dead and she missed her family, but there was nothing interesting about her, you know? I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but she just was so bleh, and this plot was pretty good, but again, needed to be half the length. So I gave this 3 stars. I never really read an adult sci-fi book before, so I'm hoping that didn't contribute to my lack of enjoyment here, but I just think he needed a better editor. I also read The Invisible Life of Addy LaRue by V.E. Schwab, and if you can't tell by all these tabs, this was a 5-star all-time favorite book. This is the Owl Crate Special Edition, which is growing on me, kind of. I'm still a little mad about it. But yes, I absolutely love this. V.E. Schwab's writing is always amazing. I haven't read that many of her books yet, but I'm definitely planning to read all of them as soon as I can. The plot and the setting and the characters in this book were also great, but the best thing about it to me was kind of the bigger messages that it conveyed. There is a lot of themes in this about what legacy we leave behind and who we are as people. And there's also a lot of messages about like insecurity and being enough and self-worth, really. And I feel like you could really analyze the crap out of this in English class, which is maybe why I felt the need to annotate it. I basically just put a tab every time there was like a quote that made me go like, oh my god. So clearly there was a lot of those. Yeah, I mean, this is all over the internet and it's super popular, but it's for sure worth the hype, and I loved it. I'm definitely going to reread this all the time. The last adult book I read was The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, which I talked about in my reading vlog. I gave this 5 stars as well, but mostly for the characters and the setting / aesthetic. It's set in basically an underground library. I just realized I've only been giving plot summaries for like half of these books, but most of them are so popular, I feel like that's fine. Sorry. But this one, I'll try to give kind of a summary, I guess. It's about a boy who finds a book in a university library, and it has his story in it, and he basically is trying to figure out why, and that leads him down all these different adventures. Yeah, so the setting's amazing, the writing is beautiful, and the plot is kind of confusing. I feel like I finished this book and still didn't really know what was happening, but I had such a good time reading it that I still gave it 5 stars. The writing is very whimsical, so if you don't like that, you won't like this. But I immediately ordered her other book, The Night Circus, to read because I did enjoy her prose so much. As usual, I read way more young adult books, so let's get into those now. The first one I read was The Hand on the Wall by Maureen Johnson, which is the 3rd book in her Truly Devious series. The series basically follows a girl named Stevie who goes to a prestigious boarding school where a unsolved crime happened about 100 years ago, and she's super into true crime, so she's trying to solve the crime. How many times can I say crime? There is a fourth book in this series coming out in April, so I was kind of nervous going into this that it wasn't going to wrap up the mystery, but it definitely did, which was really satisfying. I liked how all the loose ends got tied up. I just felt as though this book wasn't super necessary. Like, nothing really happened until the last 20 pages, if that makes sense. But that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. I really love the characters in this series and the setting as well. But I just think this maybe could have been 2 books to wrap up the mystery, especially where they're not that long. But if you were hesitating to read this series because the 4th book isn't out yet, you are totally able to read these, and then the 4th book I think is going to either be a totally new mystery or kind of like starting a continuation. Yeah, my favorite thing about this series is Stevie, the main character. She's got anxiety, which I feel is done really well. It comes across as very accurate and representative, really. And I really love these, and I've been recommending them all the time at work, where I work at a bookstore now. So a lot of people have been buying this on my recommendation, so hopefully they're good. I also read My Plain Jane by a couple different authors. It's Cynthia Hand, Brodie Ashton, and Jodi Meadows. This is a sequel companion, I guess, to My Lady Jane. So basically they've taken famous Janes in history and they're doing like a retelling of their story. The first one was about Lady Jane Grey, and this is about Jane Eyre. I liked the first book, but it wasn't amazing. Like, I think I maybe gave it 3.5 stars. The humor in these series is really good. But this one I gave 5 stars. I actually really loved it. It's got a really different twist because Charlotte Bronte, who wrote Jane Eyre, is actually a character in the story. So it's fascinating. I don't want to tell you too much because it's nice to go in as a surprise to see how they've changed the story of Jane Eyre. But even if you haven't read Jane Eyre, you'll really enjoy this. Yeah, it's super funny, and I think they made a joke about Trump's inauguration, which I thought was really funny, unless I totally misinterpreted it, which is possible. I also read Hollow City, which is the 2nd book in the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series, and I actually really enjoyed this. When I reread the first book, I was thinking that it was just kind of a meh series that like I was just reading to read, but I actually had a really good time, and I gave this one 4 stars. So this follows a boy named Jacob who goes to an island off the coast of Scotland, I think, and finds out some secrets about his grandfather's past, basically, and there's magical children. In this one they are in London, and it was really, really good. I liked it a lot. The characters are super compelling, and it's a very spooky atmosphere. I fly through these, they really don't take me very long, so yeah, I would recommend these. I also read The Diviners by Libba Bray, which is the first book in her Diviners series. These are super popular on YouTube, and I've been really excited to start them. So I'm planning to read the 2nd book this month, but I did really enjoy this. I found it was a little bit of a slow start, but I did end up giving it 4 stars. I was a little bit confused by all the different perspectives, so I think I could have benefited from reading it like a little bit slower and really trying to figure out who everyone was. But basically it follows a girl named Evie who is sent to New York City in the 20s. Yep. And she has the power to like sense an item's past when she touches it, so she can find out like who had it and what happened to them. It's a terrible explanation. And there is a serial killer in New York, and she's trying to help figure out who it is. It was creepier and like more gruesome than I expected, but I'm super excited to finish the series, and am planning to read them soon. There was a couple days this month where I was really in the mood to read a contemporary and just like break up all the fantasy and sci-fi I'd been reading, and the first one I picked was On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. I have read The Hate U Give several times. It's absolutely amazing, and if you haven't read it yet, where have you been? But On the Come Up is her other novel, and it's just as good. This follows a girl named Bree who wants to be a rapper. My favorite thing about this book is that Bree is like a less sympathetic protagonist than Star in The Hate U Give. She is like amazing and inspirational and super talented, but she makes more bad decisions, and she does things that you're like, oh girl, like why did you do that? I really like that because I think it shows you that even if someone's not perfect, they still deserve, you know, to be a person. They deserve to like live their lives. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but yeah, she's a great protagonist. Angie Thomas has a new book coming out in, I think, January, and it's kind of a companion to The Hate U Give, if I'm remembering correctly. So yeah, I will read anything she comes out with, and these are such a good commentary on race in America. One of the other contemporary books I read was Foolish Hearts by Emma Mills. When I first read this, I gave it 5 stars, and I'm thinking now I'm going to bring that down to 4, just because I've already kind of forgotten what it was about a little bit. I know it's about a girl named Claudia, and basically it's just following all of her friendships and relationships through high school. And it was really good. The ending was super impactful, but I honestly can't remember why, which is so sad. But it was a good read. Maybe I should look up what was in the ending because I know that it impacted me. But yeah, I love a good high school drama read sometimes, and it wasn't just about drama, it was about real problems. So I guess read this. I also read Things That Just Stay Buried by Casey L. Bond. This came in a Fake Crate subscription box, so I had never heard anything about it or the author, and it was really enjoyable. I gave it 3.5 stars just because of, like, the writing was not really that great. It was kind of simple, but not in a good way, and the plot kind of dragged, and I feel like there were a lot of plot holes, but I had a good time reading it. So it's basically about a girl named Larkin, of course, and there is an apocalypse when all the zodiac signs come to life and they like claim everyone who is born under their zodiac sign. I love astrology, so the premise really grabbed me. I wish that my zodiac sign, Scorpio, had been a more prominent character in this book because I love Scorpio. But it's mostly about Aries. So one of the main plot points in this book is about Larkin's romance with Aries. So it's more like a fantasy romance than a fantasy. The beginning I thought was really, really good, and I was like, oh my god, this is going to be a 5-star read. But yeah, it dragged a little bit, the writing wasn't that great, but I did enjoy it, so 3.5 stars. I read Legendborn, and I've got the Owl Crate edition of that here too. I gave this one 4.5 stars. It was amazing, and I cannot wait to read the next book. This follows a girl named Bree, whose mother dies in an accident, and then she goes to a like early college program at UNC Chapel Hill, and she witnesses like a monster murder someone, basically. I found it was a little tiny bit long, but I really loved like the complexity of Bree's emotions. She was an amazing 16-year-old character. She didn't feel too young or too old. She felt very 16 and very flawed, but also very relatable. Why do I like flawed protagonists so much? Clearly I'm flawed. The diversity in this book is amazing. I think it's got a lot of representation, and I can't wait to see where this series goes. It was definitely a new favorite. I just nothing like wowed. I don't really know why I didn't give it 5 stars instead of 4.5. It just wasn't like, I didn't fly through it. Like I took a couple breaks and I needed to come back to it, you know? So usually when there's a 5-star read for me, I like can't stop reading. But yeah, I definitely would recommend this book, and it definitely deserves all the hype that it's been getting. Because it was my birthday month, I wanted to reread the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy and the accompanying novella. This is my disgusting mismatched set. I hate it. Luckily I'm getting the Illumicrate set that's going to match and be beautiful, so it's fine. But yes, the books are Daughter of Smoke and Bone, Days of Blood and Starlight, Dreams of Gods and Monsters, and then the novella is Night of Cake and Puppets. And all of these were 5 stars. I actually wrote in my bullet journal that Dreams of Gods and Monsters got 6 stars because if that was a thing, I would give it to them. This series, like all of Laini Taylor's writing, you really need to go into it blind, but the plot is the most unique thing I've ever read in my entire life. It's not similar to anything that I know of. It follows a girl named Karu who was brought up in Prague by basically monsters, and then her doorway back to her monstrous home is burned one day. There's so much more to it than that, and I don't even know where to start, but they're so amazing. Her writing is perfect, yes, but the plot is just breathtaking. By the end, it gets wrapped up so beautifully, and I can't say enough good things about this series. It made me really remember how much I love unique stories and, you know, different kinds of plots. I think there's so many different formulaic young adult books that I really do love, to be honest. But this just reminded me how amazing something different can be. And then Night of Cake and Puppets follows Karu's best friend, and it's just like a super cute little romance. It's about one night, and it's illustrated. So this is like a must if you're a fan of the series, and it's just so cute. And look at it, it's so precious. 10 out of 10, I'm obsessed with this series, and I'm going to be building a shrine to it on one of my corner bookshelves. Oh no, corner bookshelves. I also read How the King of Alphaem Learned to Hate Stories. Yeah, by Holly Black, which is a companion novella / short story collection to the Folk of the Air trilogy, and I gave this 4 stars. It was pretty good. I'm not the biggest fan in the world of the Folk of the Air trilogy. I enjoyed reading it, but I feel like it's a lot of people's favorite, and it definitely wasn't my favorite. I think that a lot of people hype it up because of the romance, and the romance was really strange to me. And it was just a little bit underwhelming, but I did want to read this. Obviously, I ordered it. So it follows Carden, who is the main male protagonist in the Folk of the Air, before the trilogy, and then it goes into some of the scenes in the series from his POV, and then I think there's just one scene from after. So not a must-have. I didn't order any of like the special editions of this. I just got the normal one, but I did enjoy it, and I gave it 4 stars. I also reread the entire Ember in the Ashes series thus far because Sky Beyond the Storm. I cannot remember what this title is. A Sky Before the Storm? The 4th book. Anyway, An Ember in the Ashes is wrapped up in my advent calendar to kind of represent A Sky Beyond the Storm because I don't have the book yet. But these are so good. So An Ember in the Ashes, I gave 5 stars. A Torch Against the Night, I gave 4 stars just because it dragged a little bit, but it was still amazing. And then A Reaper at the Gates, I just finished last night and I gave 5 stars. It was amazing. I think when I talked about these in my TBR, I described them so awfully. I said it was inspired by ancient Rome, kind of, and Laia and Elias, like Laia is a slave, and then they fall in love, which is this... I knew my plot summaries were bad, but that one is just next level bad. The romance is present here, but it's so much more than that. This world is so dark and gruesome and horrific, and these characters just need to be held. I'm terrified to read the fourth book because I know that someone is going to die, I'm assuming, and I don't know who, and I'm just worried. But yeah, the writing in these is great, but the plot and the settings are just so well done. They're so complex, and they're definitely not your typical young adult fantasy. They are something much more. Finally, I read Kingdom of the Wicked. This was a fairy-lute edition, and it's absolutely beautiful. But I gave this one 3 stars. I just really don't think that Carrie Maniscalco is going to be for me. I read her Stalking Jack the Ripper series, and I just feel really disconnected from the writing. I do love her settings and her atmosphere, and the characters are like fine. I'm always interested in the plots, but the writing just doesn't grab me. It feels very like passive, I guess. With that said, I'm probably going to read the second book in the series because I don't know why, just because they're so pretty, I guess. Like, I'm not going to get rid of this. So yeah, I mean, if you like Stalking Jack the Ripper, you will adore this for sure. And I didn't hate it, I just didn't love it. So solid 3 stars. Not the greatest way to end this wrap up, but I had so many amazing reads this month. Yeah, so that is it. That was my amazing month of reading. I'm hoping to read just as many books this month because I've got my advent calendar, so I kind of have to. But if I'm going to be finishing a book a day, I need to go and get doing that. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you're having a wonderful day, and happy December. Bye!